Welcome to this week's edition of H3 TV, where we talk about how do we stay hopeful, healthy, and happy through disruption in our life. You know, I like to come to you every week just to pour into you and to encourage you, to remind you that we are one being and how we show up at work starts with how we get up in the morning. So today I have the pleasure of having my new friend Heidi with me. Please help me welcome Heidi to the stage. Hey, good morning, Heidi. Thanks.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. Tell us about you. Who are you? Where do you live? What do you do?
Yeah, so I am Heidi Mortenson. I live in Minnesota. I'm married and I have three kids, 6, 8, and 10. I am a marriage and family therapist. So by trade, that's what I do. A couple of years ago, I did start a podcast. In the midst of COVID, I saw people were really struggling. So I now am a podcaster and it's called Strong Tower Mental Health. And I combine mental health and faith. So I do teachings, but then I also bring on different speakers to share their testimony, their story, a book that they've written, or maybe a church that they're running. And I also wrote a book called The Brave Encourager, which focuses on how can we pull the gold from other people instead of pointing out all the dirt and the struggles that we have.
Beautiful, Heidi. I love it. Thanks so much. That's when I started this too, was during COVID. I was like, I got to pour encouragement. People are sitting home feeling so alone and isolated. So I love that you did that. I went with video because I'm not an auditory learner. I'm visual and I want to be friends with the people on the screen. So thanks for pouring into people. We need more of that, right? So when I say the word disruption or storm, what do you think of? What comes to mind to you? What's a visual for a disruption in your life?
I see it as an opportunity. It's a divine intervention. It's a pivot. It's a shift. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It's not something that you're like, yay, thank you for the disruption. But it's okay, what can I do in it? There's also some gold in there that I would say if you're a faith person, God is trusting you to move. He's trusting you that you have more in you. And a lot of times, if we don't have the disruption, we just stay small and we just stay, who we've always been and what we've always known. And so disruptions are actually meant to grow us. They're meant to actually help us to see more of who we are. But it depends on how we respond to them.
100%. I was working with a new client yesterday and I was saying to her, she had just lost her job. I said, are you going to see this as something taken from you or something given to you? And she said, 100% given to me. I was like, oh, I love that. I also wanted to say, I forgot to say in the intro, if you have questions or comment for myself or Heidi throughout this presentation, please put them in the chat box. If you don't get them in the chat box while we're live, we will watch that online and we will make sure to respond to any questions you have. Plus, Heidi, I wanted to say, as a mom, people often ask me, what's the best age of kids? And though I love them all, and my kids are all 3 adults now, I think 7 and 9 is the most magical stage where you're still super amazing and they still want to hold your hand. And the questions become not just why, but why is the moon in the sky? So I love that you have these 3 beautiful children. So when we think of the word disruption for you personally, what's been one of the biggest disruptions you've gone through, Heidi?
The biggest disruptions that I have gone through was about 5 years ago. I got to a point in my marriage and in my business that I was not happy. It was kind of a slow progression. I didn't really realize that it was happening, but my husband and I were not on the same page. We were not getting along. He's helping out with the business in the background. And I'm, doing what I think is what I should be doing, having the people work for me that I think are who should be working for me. But I was bleeding. Our marriage wasn't doing well. And so I got to a point where I was very depressed, even thinking about, I don't even want to live anymore. And so it was this divine moment of like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get myself out of this? And I remember thinking, well, I'm a Christian. Like, why am I struggling so bad? Like, I was like being honest with God and like, what the heck is going on? I am a mess and I don't like my life. I feel completely trapped. And so in the moment, I reached out to God. I didn't even know what I was doing, but now I look back and it's called surrender. And I just said, I need you. Like, I need you. I can't do this myself. I need you. And from that moment, a little bit of hope started to come in, and I started to get little bits of hope, and things started happening. We got marriage counseling from really good counselors. We got business consultation, and I started to learn that I actually had a very successful business. I wasn't worthless. I was actually making good choices, but I wasn't always honoring my husband's strengths, and I didn't realize my strengths. And so we came together to see that businesses need processes and structure, and I need to follow, my dreams and passions and do what I'm called to do, which is more visionary work. And so when you have those kind of people that come together, you have to be able to and be able to work together. And so, I did a lot of inner healing and deliverance, and I did a lot of personal work also to be able to get to a place where I love myself and I'm proud of what I've done. And now we're on the other side of this. So the disruption was quite awesome, actually. It really changed my life.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say thank you so much for sharing, because I think that we decide as a society, oh, I bet Heidi's life is easy. I bet everything's perfect for Heidi, her marriage. She's got this business. Like, we make up stories about people, right? And so I really appreciate you being authentic and transparent with our listeners, because I think so often people look at other people and they think they have it all together. And I love that you combine the personal with the professional, because the truth is we are one being, right? And so when we're struggling personally, it affects our business, it affects our performance at work, it affects our marriage, it affects our children, it affects everything. So I love that you shared that. And I was laughing because I used to say, my husband swears at me. He is also part of my operations on the back end. And I'm like, there are people like, what does he say? Greg doesn't seem like a swearer. I'm like, he says process and systems. I hate those words, process and systems. But the truth is, we need them to be successful in our business. Hey, Dean, thanks for being with us. We need process and systems to be successful, right? And we sometimes need an outside set of eyes to go, hey, you're the visionary, but you need an operations person, you need a detail person, you need to get the details done person. And so thank you so much for sharing that, because you're really sharing a big message to our audience of, personally and professionally, that we sometimes need, even if we're a therapist, even if we're a coach, to get outside resources to support us on our journey. So how did you stay hopeful in that season when you felt like, it sounds like pretty dark, right? Personally and in your relationship, how did you find hope?
Well, I found hope. The first thing that I thought of when you asked me that question was the people that were around me. I started to really pay attention to what was speaking to my heart. A Bible verse that has been really significant for me is Proverbs 4:23, which says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. I was not doing that. So I was very discouraged. I was not in this hopeful place. And I started to notice that, like, my heart's not protected. I'm not protecting my heart. And I started to pay attention to who was speaking into me. And I was very intentional about finding people who spoke life into me. And so I started attending conferences. As I would do this, I would make friends with people, and then I'd stay connected to them. And I was able to connect with people locally. During COVID, I started a prayer group that just met, because I was like, I just am struggling. Who's with me? And so it's been 2 years now, and we keep meeting every month. And I was very intentional about what was getting spoken into my ears, into my eyes, into my heart, because I saw that I was struggling and I was broken. So that, I would say, is the biggest thing. I mean, there are many other things that I was doing. I was very intentional about learning how to shut up. I hope that's not too offensive to some people, but I did a lot of talking and not a lot of listening. So I learned how to soak, if you've ever heard of that, which is just sitting with worship music. And it was super awkward for me and very hard for me to do, but I needed to do it. I needed to shut down my soul. I needed to shut off my heart and be able to learn how to actually access peace, because I didn't know what that was. I mean, I'd get drunk on the weekends. I was a good person, very positive, very happy, but I really didn't have that sense of joy and hope that you can only get from quieting your heart and allowing the peace of God to come in. And so I was very intentional about the things that were kind of messing me up and bringing in peace and hope in the midst of that.
Yeah, I love that, Heidi, so much. People make fun of me on a regular basis, but I'm pretty clear about what I watch, what I listen to, who I surround myself with. And I have really big boundaries because I grew up without any boundaries. And it's so easy to get sucked into the drama, sucked into the negative, be around people. Well, this happened to me. Well, something worse happened to me. I don't watch the news. I think you can find the news everywhere. I'd rather make the news with good news than listen to the dramatization of negativity and of fear. And I think that a lot of people are leading their life by fear. And kind of like you said, you get drunk on the weekends. I think a lot of people are like, I just got to make it through to Friday and then I'm hitting the bar or hitting the party or hitting the whatever because I don't love my life and I don't love myself. And so I think when you get quiet, so important, sitting in that silence, allowing yourself to be still. I say we shut down our computers more than we shut down ourselves, right? And so we have to learn to be in that stillness and that quiet to find that calm. I think we are have such an anxiety-driven, fear-based world. So I think that can come very naturally. You have to be very intentional to say, stop, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I love that you made that decision. And not only for yourself, but you're role modeling to your kids and you start a prayer group. So you're inviting other people into your quiet. Those are beautiful things, Heidi. Thanks for sharing that. How did you stay healthy? I always think of health as like 7 areas: physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, relationship, career, all of these different ways we can be healthy. How did you, because it's kind of step one and you kind of shared a little bit, you got some outside sources, but what were some of the steps you took either on a daily basis or to like stop that darkness and start slowly climbing out?
So I'm going to say something about physical health first, just because that has been something that I've noticed. I've always been an athlete. I always really enjoyed working out. It was helpful for my mind.
Yeah.
So that's something that I really made sure to be intentional about and stay plugged into. I actually go to the gym at 5 a.m. And I don't think about it. So it's not oh my gosh, I'm going to the gym and I'm making it a big deal. I just go. Like, it's part of my life. A lot of times I'll, worship on the way in or pray on the way in. I drink a lot of water. So there's just a couple things that I would say that I do that I tend to my health. I take vitamins every day. Like, these are some things that, like, I'll even talk to my clients. I'm like, are you drinking water? Are you taking vitamins? And we just kind of forget about these little things that they affect our mind. They affect our heart. So I've really been good about exercising, drinking water, taking vitamins. So those are some things that I definitely do. Some couple other personal things is I make sure to go on dates with my husband. So we'll schedule dates, we'll get a sitter, and we go out. That's something that has helped me to stay healthy. We vacation at least a couple times a year. We get out, with the family, we do things outside of where we're at. I will do things like bake with my kids, carve pumpkins. I could tell you, I just counted 14 pumpkins that we carved that are on my front porch right now. So, we just do the things that kind of don't really make sense. Like, it causes a lot of mess, and doing those things that just kind of keep your heart happy and joyful and silliness. I'll go sledding with my kids. I love snowboarding and skiing. And so I'm active. I just do things. My kids are in hockey and my husband coaches. And so I support him and, stay connected with the parents. And so I'm just doing things that are attending to my heart and keeping my heart joyful. And then some personal things. I journal. I love to journal. And I don't just journal like, oh, I'm struggling. I actually will journal and talk to God. So by the end, whatever that struggle was, it's usually gone. And I've got some great revelation that I think is just amazing and I'm all excited about. So I do that. I definitely make sure to read. I love reading. So I have lots of different books. As you can see behind me, this is actually a real background. And I've read most of them. So I love reading and just having deep conversations, like talking to you right now. This fills me by having this conversation with you, because you're so authentic and you're so real. And this is what we need. We need real, authentic people speaking their stories.
That's right. 100%. We're very similar. I love, like I always teach people, when I was teaching my kids to cook, it was not about getting it right. It was about how much of a mess and creative and fun and laughter can we have together? How many pumpkins can we carve? How many Easter eggs can we hide for the whole neighborhood? You're making me miss those days gone by. And I love that. I want people to remember, health, usually we do go to physical right away. And I like that you said, you get up in the morning and you go. It's not a, do I feel like it? Do I not? Because we can easily talk ourselves out. I used to own gyms, and I'm like, I owned gyms for 12 years. Lots of people came in grumpy, but nobody ever left saying, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Everybody left saying, I'm glad I came. I'm glad I came. And that was so rewarding to me, to be just a sliver of their journey to physical health and all the different things. I love relationship health, right? Our kids, our significant other, our husbands, like how we get to love them and make that a priority. And for those of us that own businesses, that work hard, that love what we do, that are visionaries, it's hard to take time out. So I love you. Like, you might think, oh, good for her. No, she has to be intentional. Heidi, you got to schedule that time and leave. And knowing, of course, it's more important, but we can be caught up in our work. How about happiness? You shared a little bit, but what are some things as you look back at that season when you were feeling not your best? How did you find laughter or humor or joy, internal or external joy and happiness?
In the dark season, it was pretty hard. I would find joy in a kitten, like a baby. Like, there'd be little things that would give me joy. I feel like God was kind of squeezing out certain things in certain moments. My son would say to me, Mom, you're so beautiful. I love you so much. And it would just be out of the blue. So I'd have little moments of happiness like that. I'd have friends that would reach out to me. They'd give me gifts or, like with little sayings on it. Those moments, that brought me happiness. I'd have people that would give me encouraging words just out of the blue, not planning it. And those were the things that really helped me to get through when it was really hard.
Nice. Little things can mean a lot, though, when we're feeling hopeless and when life feels very dark, right? I lost my brother to suicide and my nephew, and my father drank himself to death. So 3 generations of that. What I realized is that it's not that people want to die, it's that they're in darkness and they're stuck in that darkness and there's no light. And so I always think about, I used to say, like, who were your mentors, but really it's like, who lit your path, even for a moment, let alone a week or a lifetime, like who showed up and just had a gift for you, just a little, hey, I see you. Hey, Mom, you're so beautiful, in that moment of the darkest days of our lives, which I think everybody faces to different degrees at different times. But having those tools beforehand is so helpful. Often I'll ask people, what's in your medicine cabinet? And one of the things for me is that movement. Movement is my medicine. I have to get up and walk every day. Not do I feel like it, I have to go do it because it's good for my mind. It's good for my body. It's good for my spirit. It's just good all around. So what are, Heidi, as you look back through the seasons of your life, and it can be that particular season or throughout, what are some lessons you've learned that our listeners right now, maybe they're struggling, maybe they're going through a hard time in their relationship, their career, or multiple areas, physically, professionally, or personally? What are some lessons that you've learned? Maybe your top 3 lessons that you could share with us.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I would say is self-awareness. I think there's too many people that do not focus on themselves, or they don't focus on themselves, or they focus on themselves so much so that they're like, I'm fine, I'm fine. So they look down and they look back instead of forward and up. But being self-aware enough to be able to do something about it. So for example, I needed to be self-aware that at times I don't slow down and I wasn't listening to people. That was a big awareness. That was hard for me to hear, but I needed to do that work so that I could improve. So that self-awareness helped me to be more joyful and me to be happier, and it helped the people around me. So that would be the first one. The next one would be, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, loosen up, let go, let it go. Like, I think there's so many people that are so wound up and they're so uptight about life and about what do I have to do next and how do I do this? And it's like, just hold it loosely. Like, it's not, we don't get to take any of this stuff with us when we die. Just being able to just be in the moment when you're in the moment. Like, I'm sitting here with you. I'm not worried and thinking about a million other things. I'm here with you and I'm enjoying this time with you, Annie, and just letting everything else go. And so being able to just hold things loosely. So the first thing is being able to be self-aware, hold things loosely, and then be able to be authentic. Be completely authentic, be honest. And I'm saying this, so this kind of ties into the first one. many of us think we're honest and we think we're authentic, but we're not. And so, like, for example, if I were to be completely honest with you, I would say, I was frustrated with my husband this morning, and there was a little frustration that came in, but I don't let it run me. I'm being honest with myself. But in the midst of that, I was able to be like, oh, but here's what I can say. Here's what I can do. And it just really quickly, I'm able to roll through skills and things to say. And how can we walk through this with parenting our kids? And it comes out more peacefully, but I'm honest with myself. I'm not faking it within me. I'm not acting like, oh, everything's perfect. Everything's wonderful. And then I come out to the world as looking perfect when in reality, inside, I'm not being honest with myself. So really being able to say, like, I am sad, I am angry, I am frustrated, I am happy. Even being happy and being joyful is a vulnerable state of mind. To actually say, oh, I'm like really proud of myself. I did something really hard. And like, that's vulnerable. And so being able to just be authentic. And I think all three of these go kind of hand in hand, because if you're not able to let things go, you can't learn how to really be authentic and honest. And so those are my three things.
I love all three of those. And I would ask you, Heidi, if you don't mind, if you'd put those in the comments online when we get done, in case somebody misses them, or to reiterate them. These are great treasures and gifts that we can give people, is reminding them these lessons. I was telling my husband this weekend, we've gone to lots of different churches since we moved to Florida. And I said, not just pastors, but speakers. I help people become professional speakers. But what makes people love you the most is when you are real, and real being kind of messy, kind of complicated, kind of silly, kind of goofy. And I said, people will line up literally for 6 hours and wait to talk to me when I get done speaking. And I'll tell my husband, it's not because I'm so amazing or so great. It's because they're like, oh my gosh, you're just like me. You're totally a dork. Or you're right. You did look goofy at that. And you laugh at yourself. And just that humanness. And I think when we speak at people and we're like, this is the 3 steps and you have to do them, and we scare people. But when we say, you know what, this is what I try to do, or this is what I'm working on, or this is where like this morning you got up and were frustrated. I was frustrated this morning. I'm over it. It lasted, but you know what I mean? Like, that's real, rather than everything's perfect. It's never perfect for any of us. And when we pretend it is, we actually do a disservice and a disconnection to our clients, to our audience, to say, be human, because we are complicated. Is there anything when you look back that you wish you would have done differently? Anything that you're like, you know what, if I knew that then, I would have done this differently? Or do you feel like it worked itself out as it was meant to? Or is there something you'd change?
Yeah, I mean, my answer is that I wish I would have had more Christian discipling and mentorship, but I now realize God did what he did, and I maybe wouldn't have listened. I maybe would have been a little too stubborn or rebellious to listen. But that is something that I thought about. Like, I wonder what it would have been would have been like if I actually had discipleship from the moment that I, said yes to Jesus when I was 16 at this church that my friend invited me to. But I didn't. I just kept going on living my life and being around the same people that I was around. And I really didn't learn and apply. I was pretty lukewarm, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what lukewarm meant. I wasn't aware of any of that because I wasn't actually really reading the Bible, or I wasn't actually devoting myself to Jesus. And I think that I wish I would have had more mentorship and more people guiding me in that direction.
So that ties perfectly into my next question for you, Heidi. How are you using your own disruption, your own storm, your own struggles to serve other people and to be that mentor?
Yeah, that's like what I do all the time. So I am a therapist. So I work with people and I help them to bring healing into their heart, into their relationships. I help them to love themselves and to see themselves as completely whole and accepted and loved just the way that they are. So healing things from past trauma, from different relationships. So that's what I do in my work as a mental health therapist. And then I also do supervision for therapists that are wanting to be licensed. And so I'm leading in that way as well. And then I do different speaking engagements. Like at the end of the month, I'm speaking at a parenting conference at a local church here in Minnesota, and a women's conference in the spring. And then I also have done some business consultation with businesses. And just because of my experience with owning a business myself and being in mental health, I have a different perspective. So I'm doing things like that to give back. Of course, I have the podcast. And that's something that I'm, doing different teachings every week to really help people to find hope and do it in a way that's that combines the mental health piece. I think we often can ignore the mental health piece and we just jump to things that feel a little bit easier and a little bit better. And so I actually talk about hard things and I talk about things that many people want to avoid. So I'm like, well, it doesn't do any good for us to avoid it when it's still there. So I'm on social media, and so I'll post different, encouraging messages pretty much daily.
Yeah. I think a gift from God is making the hard things easy. And I'm not saying it's easy to do it. I'm just saying I also talk about those hard things, Heidi. And when we can open that conversation, I always feel like if we save one life, if we get one person into therapy, one person into getting the help they need when they're acting like I'm good, but they're falling apart inside, let's not wait till it's too late. So I love that you talk about the hard stuff. Mental health obviously is so important to me in my life and my mission, my call. Dean is saying he loves your honesty, Heidi, and such a special message. So thank you for sharing that. So I love that. So important. You said you wish you would have had maybe a Christian mentor or influence. Who knows if you would have listened, but are you doing anything on the Christian aspect to mentor and bring in, or is that part of your business? Does it have a Christian base? Or you kind of said you were leading a prayer group. So that's what I was curious about.
Yeah. So last year, I also started bringing together some Christian therapists. And I do that once a month, the first Friday of the month. And so that's just by Zoom. And so that's something that I just started doing. I have these women that get together once a month. I have quite a few people that I don't know if I'd say that I mentor them because they also mentor me. We're friends, but I would say at different times, they'll ask me for prayer and I get prayer from them. And so we kind of go in seasons where I might be mentoring them. But I've quite a bit of people in my life that are like that, that I would say that I speak into and I check in with. How are you doing? And then also the supervisees that I have. And that I wouldn't say is Christian, but it's still leading and encouraging others.
Awesome. I love it. Love it all. So important. Such important work. I always feel like what an honor to be able to serve people at their lowest point sometimes in life, right? People say, you're the therapist. This is what they tell me. I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. You're the therapy session I didn't know I needed. I'm like, there you go. When I speak to an audience, they're like, are you a counselor? I'm like, oh no, I'm just a therapist. I've just been in enough therapy. And so I know. So I'm wondering about how like maybe 3 keys. How are you soaring above your circumstances? Because maybe you were at a really low point, but there's times, hey, Christine, thanks for being here. There's times we circle back into that, whether it's letting our business run our lives, whether we forget about our significant other or our kids or our joy or whatever. So I always say, don't let your disruptions define you, or how do you soar above your circumstances? So what are some keys for you, Heidi, that you've used to continue to soar? You've come out of this. That doesn't mean you don't have bad days, but how are you soaring overall above the circumstances of stress, of disappointment, discouragement in the world? How are you soaring?
Okay. So the 3 are: 1 is stay hungry, 2 is purpose and vision, and 3 is consistency.
Okay.
So I've always been a very intense person. I'd be very on fire, very excited about things. And I didn't know that actually was like a gift to be used. I just thought I was just very intense and would get very excited and very animated. And this gift actually caused some harm because I didn't always discern who and when I would share my heart with, or who I would hurt in the process, because I'm like, this is what I think you should do. And not discerning, nope, they're not even asking for that. Let's not share that with them. So in the midst of this, I actually got hurt and God showed me the gift that I did have, which is you need to actually use that for good. And so after getting healed and kind of, allowing my heart to actually see more of how God wants me to walk out, I now am stepping out and I see that intensity as a good thing, but I need to stay hungry. I need to stay hungry. I need to stay excited, stay intense, and not lose that hunger that God gave me, because that's, for me, I can go into depression. I don't struggle with anxiety at all because I'm super fearless and I have a lot of courage to do things, but I will do things that I should not be doing. So for me, I need to stay hungry. And then the second thing is purpose and vision. I've had a lot of people speak things over me. Like, even before I wrote my book, I had people that were like, I see you as an author. And I was like, you do? I'm like, I didn't see that. A couple of years ago, someone was like, you're to preach. And I was like, I wasn't thinking about preaching. Like, that wasn't, I wasn't, I mean, I'm a therapist. I own a business. Like, I'm not thinking about that, but somebody else had a vision and it put life in me. And that life gives me vision and it gives me purpose, that I know that God actually is wanting me to do something to bring freedom to other people. That gives me purpose. It gives me vision. And I have all sorts of dreams, all sorts of ideas that I got to get my feet back on the ground, but I still write them down and I still have them. And if the structure and process comes to play, they will become actual, things that will be living instead of just dreams. But it keeps me going by having that. And then the last thing is consistency. This is probably the most important thing, because if you just have ideas, if you just have dreams and that's it, and then you don't actually do anything, you don't stay consistent, it doesn't do any good. It's why it's important for me that I just go to the gym every day at 5 a.m. Like, I just consistently do that. I don't think about it. I don't analyze it. I don't really talk about it that much. I just go. And it's consistency that matters, because 10 years down the road, when you look back at your life, what are you going to see? What are you going to look at? You're not going to look at the one day that you're like, oh, I'm just going to stay in and just be cozy. Oh, it's raining out, I'm not going to go to the gym. No, it's the consistency and continuing to go and staying on the course and continuing to make the choices, even if you don't feel like it.
Yeah, I love that. One of my many sayings, I feel like we have a lot of alignment here, Heidi, and I love that, is commitment plus consistency over time equals change. But we have to be committed and we have to be consistent. It's not like I feel like this today and tomorrow I don't. It's that commitment and consistency, because being committed occasionally doesn't work. Heidi, Christine has a question for you. She's just saying, what would be one tip you would give someone who has struggled with physical issues for a long time, and so they're kind of feeling stressed and feeling overwhelmed because they have some physical limitations or ailments? Is there any tip that you would give them to kind of move forward and heal?
I would ask, if you didn't like, I want to ask, what can you do that you think you can't do? I want you to start to envision yourself doing things that you want to do. Start to dream, start to envision it and imagine it. What we so often do is we keep doing and saying and thinking what is right in front of us. Like, for example, my husband and I were not communicating very well at all. And I would meditate on, I can't stand him. I hate him. He's a jerk. That's all I would meditate on. Well, that was what would continue to happen. When I started to pray for my husband, and I was like, God, I pray that you help me, help him. I started praying, change me, help him. And I started seeing visions of us talking and getting along. I actually had a vision of us ballroom dancing. Well, neither of us do that, but it pulled out hope that I didn't have when I had this like vision that never could happen. Like, it was like impossible for that to happen in that moment. I started to feel some joy that this is possible. And so whatever that limitation is, I want you to start to dream and start to think, what can I do? I mean, I think about that Nick, I can't pronounce his last name, but he was born without arms and legs, and he travels and speaks all over the world, and he is like limitless. There's nothing that is impossible for him. And he is living an amazing life because he doesn't allow his limitations to run his life. And so I see a lot of this person who just wrote, I see a lot of purpose in your life. And there's I feel like God is really actually wanting you to step out and dare to dream. I know it's very vulnerable to think, well, what if it doesn't happen? And I'm like, well, what if it does? And so start to think about, speak about the things that you can actually do. So let's say, for example, you struggle with some physical limitations and you can't walk, or maybe you can only walk like, 5 steps. I want you to start thinking about walking 10 steps. Can I walk? I can walk 10 steps. I can walk 10 steps. And then I can walk down to the mailbox and back. I can walk, third of a mile, and start doing it, dreaming it, saying it, and then start walking at it and see what happens. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. Christine says, thank you. She appreciates your answer. So as we kind of wind down here, is there one story, one lesson you want to close us with before we get ready to finish this H3 TV session?
I guess what I would want to say is just the power of encouragement, that what you think and what you feel and what you see isn't always where your life is and where it can go. So I think many of us are harder than ourselves than we need to be. And you're doing way better than you think you are. And if you ask other people around you, be like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. And I love you so much. And you just do this, 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 and this. And it isn't humility to beat yourself up. I think we think like, oh, I'm just being humble, or I'm just being this kind person. No, that's crap. Like when you love yourself and when you are excited about yourself, like I was just listening to some 90s music the other day, and I just became this like little dorky girl dancing in the car because I was like, oh my gosh, I love this music. And I just really let go. And I just stepped into this place of just loving me back then. Like I started to just love myself and who I was. And so I actually had, just because I'm a therapist, and this is, I'm going to just share with you an encounter that I actually brought myself through and what you can actually walk yourself through. I went like before I was born and like just declared, you are loved, you are worthy, you are wanted, all these things. And I just pictured myself from birth all the way until now getting exactly what it is that I need. So I had great parents, but there were some times where they were too busy, too focused on other things. So I pictured them not being too busy. And that's not dishonoring to them. It's being honoring to me. And so I was able to just kind of go through, and even places where I did feel some stuckness and I did feel some trauma, I just spoke life to myself. And so speaking life to yourself at every age, so that when you're here now today, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so great. I love myself. And so there's just more gold in you than you even realize. And there's so much more in the future for you as well.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Everything. So good today to be with you. What is the best way, if we have listeners that want more information from you and want to hear from you, what is the best way to get a hold of you or to connect with you, follow up?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a website. It's my name, HeidiMortenson.com, and I'm just going to spell that. It's www.Heidimortenson.com. And you can find my email there. You can find all the social media sites. Everything is on the website.
Sounds good. If you have other questions, comments for us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, Heidi and I will both respond as needed to any questions, comments, or thoughts. We hope that this H3 TV session was encouraging to you. And no matter what disruption you're going through, you're visualizing the other side of it. And we're here to encourage you on the way. Thanks so much, Heidi, for being with us today. And we'll see you next week.